Welcome. This is Sandra Long, and I'm the author of LinkedIn for Personal Branding, The Ultimate Guide. And I also have a company called Post Road Consulting. I'm very happy to be here to present to the TWC group, and I want to thank you very much for participating. Looking forward to spending a few minutes today going through our opportunities that we have with LinkedIn and personal branding. So before we begin, I want you to imagine your very best targeted client or prospect, and imagine what that would be like if they reached out to you and were very specific about how that you could help them, and it tied in exactly with what you were most known for and what you most love to do. That's exactly what we're planning for, and it should happen, and it does happen every day on LinkedIn. Because if you're able to demonstrate your brand very clearly, then your prospects and people that you meet, even casually, socially, professionally, will have a really good idea of who you are and what kind of professional value that you can bring. So this is actually from the cover of my book, and there's a lot of blue fish in the ocean, and my theory is that I'd like you to think about being a little unique and different and really swimming the other way and being that orange fish. And that's so today, and many times when you think about LinkedIn, people jump right in and they start changing their profile, and that's fine, but I'd rather we take a few moments and step back and use this chance today to think about how you're going to be that orange fish, how you're going to be the unique brand before you start making the changes. So in my book, I have very comprehensive, goes through all parts of the profile, but today I'm going to share with you from chapter 2, which really talks about the thinking and the personal branding part so that you can think that through before you make your changes. I found this to be a really interesting statistic. This came actually from a study from LinkedIn with thousands of users that were part of this survey. So, and imagine this, that people believe, 65% of people believe that the impression that you make online is as important as the impression you make in person. That is a huge number. If you go back 5 years, 10 years, I mean, really, people weren't online 10 and 20 years ago. So now the online impression is as important as an in-person. For 65% of people, that is a huge number. And if we look at the number of people that are on LinkedIn, there are now, as of this date in September 2016, over 450 million users. And who are these people? These folks are global. The LinkedIn covers over 24 languages. They are, all ages. They are the highest educated amongst social media and the highest income. So that's the profile of the people. So if that is, and these are primarily professional people, if that's the profile of who you would like to be working with, then it's a good match for you. High growth, 2 new users per second. And a lot of that is happening from the millennials, new college grads. That is pushing the numbers very, very high. So in my practice, I have a business, and companies approach us and individuals approach us. And this is really why we get the phone calls. It's because of missed opportunities. And you can imagine, so it's people that they're missing out on sales opportunities. They're missing out on jobs. They feel that they're missing out on referrals. All these things are driving people to say, I need to be understanding LinkedIn. And there's quite a bit to it. And really, in an hour or half an hour, you can just touch the surface of where you can begin in terms of using and leveraging this incredible opportunity site. So I'm going to take you today, step by step, thinking about you and your brand. What are those elements of your brand? And then how do you put that on your profile? And then what are the languages and images that are important to you, important to your business, that would really highlight and emphasize your expertise? Because remember, we're focused here on not making anything different than what it is, but really highlighting what's unique and special about you. and it should be authentic and real, and it should match what you're doing in the real life. So the first place we start is professional expertise. So instead of being very generic about what you do, it's important to share what those specific things are that you focus on. So if you are, to give you an example, in the wellness industry, if you're maybe you're a naturopathic physician, right? Or you're a chiropractor, whatever it is that you do in the wellness business. Why not describe with specificity those areas that you focus on the most? Maybe it's headaches and stress, or maybe it's, back pain, or whatever those things are. To be specific about your focus areas is a great thing to do on LinkedIn, and it allows people to really get to know you. And then the second thing is your personal qualities. So people don't just hire you because you're the smartest person. I mean, the smartest people don't get all the business, or the people that have been in business the longest. It's not all about that. There are your personal qualities. And everything from your personality, your vision, your values, that all plays into how someone is going to select who they want to work with. So just imagine, and even it's the attitude of who you work with makes such a difference. So I might want to work with somebody who has this kind of attitude. They aim high. They see a big picture. That's the kind of attitude of a person that I might want to work with. Maybe a marketing person, maybe a wellness person. I'm a continuous learner. In anyone I work with, I want to know that someone's constantly focused on continuous learning. That's, to me, a very important attribute or quality, personal quality. Overcoming obstacles. Well, if I'm going to hire an attorney and I've had a persistent problem, I want someone who's got that perseverance. And even on the wellness side, maybe I've had a problem, gone to many doctors, and I haven't been able to solve the problem. I want to work with someone who can overcome obstacles, that's their attitude. So when you think about your unique brand elements, it's your professional expertise, those things that you're very smart about, and it's your personal elements. And thinking about that to say, who really are you? I'm going to show you a couple of examples, and I think this will bring it home. The first one is Rachel. Rachel is a recruiter. There's a lot of recruiters on LinkedIn, and they'll say that they're a recruiter, and that's all they say, and you don't know as much about them. But Rachel shares her special expertise, that she focuses on executive talent. Her functional areas are finance and operations, and her geographic focus is USA and Canada. And she could even be more specific. She could get into, CFO talent, or that she's in the New York area. As specific as you can be is better. But what about Rachel as a person? Rachel never, ever gives up, ever. She's persistent. Wouldn't you want that in a recruiter? Now, Paul. Paul's our next example. Paul's an IT manager. Again, lots of IT experts on LinkedIn, and they all kind of look the same. But Paul, we learn about him in his summary and throughout his profile, that he's an he focuses on enterprise IT solutions, remote workplace technology, and data center optimization. So you can picture him. He's not working at a small business. This is the kind of guy that works at an IBM. He has great expertise across a large enterprise, dealing with a very large dispersed workforce, and with data centers. So you get a much better sense of what type of IT manager Paul is. And what about him as a person? Paul solves problems. He's the kind of guy that you can count on to not just take a task. He focuses in on, questions the assumptions and uncovers all the issues around things. Paul's that kind of guy, and that's the kind of person from an IT perspective that's really important to know about. My last example is Maureen. Maureen's a marketing associate. You might think that people that are in marketing or HR have their profiles all set, but honestly, you can see when you start looking at profiles, there's a lot of opportunity for people to differentiate themselves. So Maureen, she focuses on the new media, digital marketing, PPC advertising, search engine optimization, and social media. So that's where she focuses on with her expertise. So you get a good sense of her. But as a person, she's an innovative person. She makes things happen. She's a lot of fun. That's great for marketing too. So you can see with these three examples that it's the professional expertise in combination with the person. That's the theory I have. That's what works for me and what works for my clients, and I wanted to share that with you. So I'm going to share with you another example. This is a real person, Lynn Garelick, and she's an interior designer in Greenwich, and I write about her in my book, lots of examples of her. But you get the attitude rather than just saying, I really believe attitude is a big part of your profile. So what's the attitude of your profile? I don't like to see an attitude which is kind of just bragging, I'm the best this and I'm the best that. The attitude you get when you read Lynn's profile is that she's grateful and she's helpful and she's happy and she's an interior designer. She has her own business. She's very involved in the community and doing all kinds of volunteering. So that's impressive. And she has a lot of passions, including art, history, and gardens, which I think has a great tie-in with interior design. So I love the idea. If I'm a potential client and I love history and I love gardening or art, this would be very intriguing to me that someone who is focused on that. And you see that in her community and her volunteering. And best of all, she doesn't just say all this, she demonstrates it. She's got photos, she's got examples, her volunteering and all of that. So it's very, very effective. And I would recommend, as an example, you write her name down. And after this little webinar, take a look at her profile and you'll see what I mean. Look at her summary, look at the photos, look at her volunteering in her community, and you'll see that she's a good example of that attitude that comes across. So think about yourself and who you are. And I love to think about living and demonstrating your brand. I don't think it's just putting something online that doesn't match, that doesn't go along with how you live your life. It should really all be in sync. So what are you doing outside of being on LinkedIn and doing your business? Are you speaking? Are you a mentor? Are you teaching? Are you advocating? Are you writing? Being a part of this group that you're in, that is a part of your brand as well, and that's how you demonstrate your brand because you're helping each other in the group. So think about all the things you do, and then how that is demonstrated, because some of the things are online, some of them are in person. So an online, is your social media, your website. In person is an interview, is a meetup, any kind of meeting that you're going to, any type of thing that you're doing in person. And then your digital and hard copy. So what are those things that you put out there that are both digital and hard copy, that all these things are work together to demonstrate your brand? And I like to think that, when you do that, you look at these questions, you say, what are those strategic elements? Because it's not like what you do on LinkedIn is separate from, everything you do elsewhere. It really is all in sync. So what are those strategic elements? What are those words, images, or links? You probably have language that you love on your website or on your Facebook page. You probably have images that you love. Where are those? And what are the links that, where are the special pages, whether it's, on your website or elsewhere online that are really relevant to you? And then outside of LinkedIn, where else do you need to do an update? Because it's kind of like when you fix up your house, when you put in a new kitchen, then all of a sudden you need to think about your dining room, or it's one thing leads to the next. Same thing when you're doing your profile and your branding, because when you think about your LinkedIn and your personal branding, it's a cascading effect. And you should be thinking about your other branding elements, right? And how you can leverage all of that. So I'm a big believer in demonstrating a brand. I think that, again, rather than just saying I this or I that, I love the idea of demonstrating your brand. So let me give you some examples of how to do that. And there's so many ways to do it. So throughout, this is a kind of a long list, so I apologize, but So with action verbs, using action verbs in your experience section, your experience is where you're describing your job and your company. And so it's using powerful verbs can be very compelling and make you sound much more interesting. Obviously, education, courses, and certifications. For many of you who are in the wellness business, maybe you changed careers. You started in another career and you came into this career. Perhaps you took some courses or got a certification. That's going to be important. The third thing is publications. Now, this can be something that you wrote, a blog post, a book, or maybe an article was written and mentioned you, or you were quoted, and you can put that on your profile as well. I would say for many of you, you're probably involved with projects, organizations, and volunteering. Just like I talked about with Lynn, there might be something that's very compelling and ties in with your personal brand for wellness. Your summary and headline are key and are very strategic, and those, I'm actually going to go further in the next couple slides talking about the summary and headline, but the right language, the right keywords are very important for your headline and summary. And then, of course, the images and videos that you use, all these are demonstrating your brand, and then the recommendations and endorsements. So it's instead of just, again, saying that you're the expert such and such, think about all these ways you're demonstrating it. Now, people are looking for you, and I'm going to say that it's happening. People are looking online for people, so they're probably looking for you. And they can put your name in Google search. And if they put your name in Google search, the most likely outcome on the top, terribly near the top of the search, would be your LinkedIn profile. Now, if your name is very unusual, it will go straight to your profile. If your name is very common, like mine, Sandra Long, typically it will go right to LinkedIn. It will go to all the Sandra Longs, and there's over 400. So I want to make sure that my profile is the best that it can be, so that if someone is Googling me and then going to LinkedIn, that my profile will come out on top. That's my goal. And of course, it has to do with a lot of factors. And I'll show you some of those factors. But one of the factors is that you have a 100% complete profile. And 100% complete profile, there's a definition by LinkedIn that that's like a minimum thing. And this is just to be optimized. Now, I have this in my book, and I have it written out in a handout, which I'll share as well. And so you can easily see what this definition is of 100% complete. So that's like a minimum thing that you need to have. Now, these things make you more likely to be found. Having a photograph is really key. Having a good headshot, and I would suggest getting a professional headshot. If you don't have the headshot, oftentimes people won't connect with you. They won't let you join groups or remember you. So it's really important. Skills and endorsements, very important on being found. Experiences, it's best to have 3. There's a section at the top of your profile called location and industry. Have that filled out, as well as education. And then, of course, being 100% complete. Now, the more active you are, the more likely you are to be found. So if you're doing things on LinkedIn, more people are going to look at your profile. But even offline, in person, the more meetings you go to, the more times you're out there getting to, networking, the more people are going to look at your profile. So you go out and meet 10 people at an event, some of those folks are going to be looking at your profile. And then, of course, the number of connections also factors in how likely you are to be found. So once they find you, you want to be memorable. You want to be interesting. You don't want to be like everyone else. Because once they get there, they're going to look at your photo and your headline and probably your summary, and then they're going to make a decision whether they're going to look at the rest of your profile. So I'm going to share with you a couple tips on the summary, because that's usually where people get tripped up. So I created these personas, which I've shared more in depth in the book, but what I found that people were really struggling with, how do I format it? What do I say? How do I structure it? So I came up with these personas to help you think about how you do it. Now, the historian persona, I'd say this is the most common. I see this a lot on LinkedIn. The person uses the summary and they say, and by the way, summary is extremely valuable digital real estate that many, many people don't use because they don't know how to write. They don't know what to say. It's just a waste. It's a wasted opportunity, and it's all free. You have 2,000 characters. So the historian starts off with something like this. I have been in the real estate business for 28 years. Prior to that, I was doing such and such. That's kind of the historian. So there's very common, and I say, if you're going to do that, really think about how you can make it more interesting and compelling. And I like the idea of using one of these other personas if possible. Now, some people, that's all they want to do, but I really encourage you to really think about some of these other ways to present yourself. Now, the weaver is someone who does a couple of things. Surprisingly, there's a lot of people that I meet that are doing multiple. Even when I work with companies, I'll go into the company and I'll do the LinkedIn training for the whole sales team or the HR team. And somebody will come up to me and say, well, they'll whisper to me, oh, well, on the weekends, I'm a DJ or I'm a real estate agent or whatever. And so how do I do that? So it's just much more common. Or I have my own business in the evenings. So I've heard that so many times. So the weaver is telling your story and weaving in the 2 or 3 things that you do. And I bet in the wellness business, I'll bet that many of you are doing multiple things. Right. So it's a very effective way to because honestly, if you're doing a couple things and someone comes to your page and maybe I know you as doing this one wellness business, but I don't know you as doing this other thing, and I come to your page and I don't see a summary that explains it, and all I see are these, the experiences, I'm confused. I don't understand it. So this is your chance to weave your story and explain kind of what you do. So I have an example in the book, and that's when I use that with my classes to help people. The third one is a themer. The themer is someone who's really experienced, and I have a example here of a senior level person who's worked at a lot of top companies. And instead of saying, that you have experience in 45 areas, we picked out 3 or 4 areas, 3 or 4 themes that have come across her career that are the most important to share. And so I call that a themer persona. The fourth one is a personality, and that's someone who is really writing about themselves in a much more intimate way. And it can be very interesting, and not everybody can do it. And then the 5th one, I'd say, is my favorite, and what we tend to work on at Post Road Consulting. And it's the storyteller. I'm going to give you some more examples, but the storyteller, it can be kind of, a lot of these, but the storyteller starts off with a story. So the one I use, my story, and if you read my profile, you'll see it, and I even do it in my book, is that when I was a child, my family moved around quite a bit. So I was always the new girl, and that has shaped my entire life. It means that I love meeting new people. It means that, for me, I was always comfortable in sales. It has impacted my life. So I just start off very briefly. I don't go into a long thing, but I talk a little bit about my story. And then the other stories, and these are just some examples that I wrote about. So George, who's a civil engineer, he starts off his profile very interesting. He says, I am the son of a carpenter. And then he goes on about growing up and then how that made him become interested to become a civil engineer. Neil is a young, successful executive, and he works for a Fortune 500 company. So he's a pretty young guy, and he talks about how he studied in China and worked in China right out of college, and that now he works with global clients, and that experience has helped him with his global clients. Michael starts his profile off, his summary, talking about how he was discovered on a golf course. So again, these are like hooks that people have. And Valerie, who is a very prestigious bank executive, has a lot of people working for her across many different branches, all in a huge region. She and a lot of her clients are small businesses. So she talks in her summary about growing up with a family business, and then how that relates to her being a banker for all these small businesses. So these are all interesting stories. I think it makes it more interesting for anyone who's reading it. And I bet with all of you that you each have a story of how you came to get into the business that you're in, how you learned, or maybe you had a passion and how you applied that passion, because that's what makes people, I think, interesting, and they want to read the rest of your profile. So in addition to a story or whatever persona is important to you, I want you to think about the language you use, the links, and the images. So for languages, the first thing is keywords. And I bet that many of you know your keywords from your website, but maybe this is a chance to rethink the keywords to make sure that you're being found for the right keywords. So you can use keywords in LinkedIn, and just like they can search for your name in Google or LinkedIn, they can also search for you with keywords. So if I'm looking for a naturopathic physician, I can put in naturopathic physician. Why would I do that in LinkedIn? Well, I probably would do that because I want to find someone that knows someone I know, rather than going into the Google search, or the phone book or whatever. I want to know who's connected to these people. So maybe before I call that naturopath physician, I'll find out who are the naturopathic physicians that are in my network, that people I know, and I can check about them. Maybe I'll see some recommendations on their profile that are people I know. So keywords are important. Action verbs, which I mentioned. So I love the idea of, instead of, in your experience section, instead of saying responsible for this, maybe you use the word launched a new wellness brand, or created, launched, created, built, sold. Those are action verbs versus responsible for. So think about the verbs you're using. And this is a question I get all the time. First, second, or third person? Well, the little blue banner says first person, and that's what I tell you. I love first person. There are some people that will insist on third person, and that's okay. But if they feel very strongly, because you really want to like your profile, but I always advise using a first person. It's more personable. So starting with I or my versus saying Sandra Long or Mrs. Long. It's much, in the wellness business, I definitely would recommend that. And really most any business, I would say first person. All right, so we just talked about language, and now we're going to talk about visual brands. So the headshot, absolutely key. Have a headshot you love. Banner image. Now, this came out about 2 years ago. Behind your headshot, you have the opportunity to have a banner image. So you can have the city that you're in, you can have an image about your company, your logo, or your service, all those things. Many of the companies I work with, we create banner images for all the employees. So we go in, so we're really helping them create brand ambassadors. So you might want to think about that if you have a company, having a banner that everyone can use, just like having images and words that everybody can use. Links. So if you've, for me, like I just have my book, so I have my Amazon up there. Any links that are important to you. So if you've got a web page that's important, you can put that under projects and write about that, why that's an important project for you, or links to publications. Anything like that is important. If you have done a book or an ebook, definitely do Amazon. If you've done videos, I imagine many of you have done videos. So your YouTube can go under your summary, your experience, or your education. So all those are great things to add, and it's really embedded into your profile. So all this comes down to thinking about you, the words, the language, the professional expertise, the personal qualities, all of these things, and taking them step by step to create that personal brand on LinkedIn. And there's more you can do, and that's called thought leadership. In fact, this is one of the areas that people are so interested in that I have a lot written about this, sharing content, how to publish articles, and using SlideShare. These are pretty exciting areas that are fairly new in the last couple of years, but people are really, really interested in these topics. So I did a survey, or Post Road Consulting did a survey, I should say, about how much time people spent updating the profile annually. So 30% of the participants said they spent over 5 hours a year updating their profile. So think about it, things change, right? Aren't you finding what your focus is changing, you're fine tuning, your experiences things are happening with your experience. So the idea of only spending under 5 hours seems like it's not enough time to spend on something that's so important as your personal brand on LinkedIn. So compare this to how much time someone spends on vacation planning. I think a lot of us spend more than 5 hours a year planning our vacation. So just think about your priorities and where does your personal brand come in terms of your professional priorities. Because this is the most popular thing happening on LinkedIn. 45 million profile views per day. Wow. So people are looking at your profile, whether you're doing your updates or not. I mean, people are looking, and the more active you are, the more views you're going to get. The more views that you get, the more interested people are in you or may refer you. It's just a fact. It's a numbers game. So I want to take 1 minute and just tell you what I think is different about the book that I have, just because this is such a new thing for me. I will quickly tell you that this book is not just about LinkedIn, but it's about personal branding on LinkedIn. So it's more strategic, a little bit about what we just talked about. It also has a companion website, meaning what you read in the book is one thing and it gives you a lot of the strategy, but you go over to the website and there's organized by chapters and there's links and there's downloads and there's even some videos. Throughout the book, I've used real examples like Lynn. You'll see lots about Lynn and lots of other people and case studies, and they're real people, and they're all in color. So that's examples in the book. And then the summary personas, I showed you a few of them. There's more examples, and with those I have actual people's examples where you can read their profile, their summary, as well as additional prompts to help you. And then there's 4 chapters on thought leadership because people really are interested in that. So those are the things that I tried to make it so that I wanted this book to be special, and that's kind of how I tried to create the value for this book. I want to thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking with you today, and I hope that we can be connected. Thank you very much.